The first time I felt my world collapse wasn't because of heartbreak or failure. No, it was because of Clara, my childhood best friend, the girl I once believed would stand beside me through everything. We grew up side by side, holding hands on our first day of school, sharing lunches, exchanging whispered secrets under blankets during sleepovers. She knew me better than anyone, which is why her betrayal cut deeper than any stranger's words ever could. It happened at a crowded birthday party. Music thumped against the walls, lights shimmered across the room, and I was nervously telling a small group about my dream, to become a graphic designer. My voice shook a little, but I spoke with hope, with passion, and then I heard her laugh. Not the light, kind laugh I grew up with, but sharp, mocking, poisonous. "Graphic design?" she sneered, her voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "That's not even a real career. You'll be broke by 25, probably still living in your parents' house, begging for scraps while the rest of us actually succeed." The group erupted in laughter, each chuckle stabbing into me like a knife. My throat tightened, my vision blurred, and my heart hammered so loudly I could barely hear the music anymore. And Clara, my Clara, stood there smirking, proud of the words that humiliated me. I wanted to disappear. The embarrassment was unbearable, my chest burning as I forced myself not to cry in front of them. I held onto my glass so tightly my knuckles turned white. In that moment, I hated myself for trusting her, for thinking she would protect me instead of tearing me down. That night, when I got home, I locked myself in my room. The tears wouldn't stop. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, replaying her words over and over again. That's not a real career. It was the kind of phrase meant to crush a dream before it could even take root. But instead of killing mine, Clara lit a fire inside me. I promised myself I'd never forget that night. Every rejection letter, every sleepless night of work, every moment I felt like quitting, her words echoed in my mind, not as defeat, but as fuel. She wanted me to fail. I decided to prove her wrong. Years later, I walk into my office with my head high, heels clicking against marble floors polished to a shine. The scent of fresh coffee lingers in the air, sunlight streaming through glass windows that overlook the city skyline. My company name is etched on the wall in bold letters, a symbol of everything I built from scratch. And there in the corner, mop in hand, head bowed, is Clara. No longer the smug girl who laughed at me, but a woman who cleans my floors. Life has a brutal sense of irony. She doesn't laugh anymore. And I don't need to remind her of the night she mocked me, because every time she scrubs the tiles of my office, she remembers it herself. But before you think I planned all of this, before you imagine me orchestrating her downfall, let me take you back. Let me show you the whole story of how betrayal turned into power, how her mockery turned into my revenge, and how sometimes justice finds its own way. Don't click away, because this isn't just a story of revenge. It's about survival, about fighting back when everyone says you can't. And trust me, you'll want to hear how it ends. My name is Isabella Carter, though most people just call me Bella. I'm 28 years old now, but when Clara humiliated me, I was just a girl of 19, standing at the fragile edge between dreams and reality. I grew up in a small town, the kind where everyone knows each other's business before you even finish living it. My father was a mechanic, a quiet man with grease-stained hands and a heart of gold. He taught me more than just how to change a tire or fix an engine. He taught me resilience. "Things break, Bella," he used to say, wiping sweat from his brow. "But that doesn't mean you throw them away. You fix them, stronger than before." My mother, on the other hand, was a dreamer. She painted sunsets on canvases and whispered to me about colors, shapes, and beauty, even when bills piled high on the kitchen counter. It was from her that I inherited my love for art, and it was from her that the idea of becoming a graphic designer first sparked. Clara was part of that childhood too. She lived just 3 houses down. Our fathers worked in the same auto shop for a while, and our mothers often swapped recipes over coffee. We were the kind of friends who shared everything: toys, secrets, first crushes. I truly believed we'd grow up side by side, cheering each other on no matter what paths we chose. But when I dared to dream of a career that didn't fit the mold of our small town, Clara's support shifted into ridicule. Maybe she thought mocking me made her look stronger. Maybe she feared I'd succeed where she couldn't. I'll never know. What I do know is that her words that night weren't random. They were cruelly deliberate. After that party, I carried the weight of her laughter everywhere. I enrolled in a design program at a community college, juggling part-time jobs to pay for tuition and software. I remember working late nights in a diner, serving greasy plates of fries while sketching logos in the margins of order pads during breaks. It wasn't easy. My father tried to help when he could, but his income barely kept the lights on at home. My mother encouraged me, but encouragement doesn't pay tuition. There were nights I thought about quitting, nights when Clara's voice echoed in my head louder than my own. That's not a real career. Still, I refused to let her be right. Slowly, I built a small portfolio. I designed flyers for local shops, menus for restaurants, even business cards for the same auto shop where my father worked. None of it paid much, but every project was a step forward. And with each step, my determination hardened. Meanwhile, Clara's life seemed glamorous from the outside. She posted pictures with college friends at sorority parties, champagne in hand, her captions dripping with confidence. Living the dream, she'd write, and I'd force myself not to compare. But the sting was always there. She never reached out, never apologized, never checked if I was okay after humiliating me. To her, I was already forgotten. But I hadn't forgotten. Not the smirk, not the laughter, not the way she turned my dream into a punchline. And as I sat in my tiny rented apartment, sketchbook open under the dim glow of a desk lamp, I whispered to myself, "One day, Clara. One day you'll see." I didn't know how or when, but I knew this much. Her mockery would not be the end of my story. The road to success isn't a straight line. It's a battlefield. And in those early years, I fought harder than I ever thought I could. My first freelance gigs paid almost nothing. $20 for a logo, $35 for a flyer, sometimes just exposure. I would sit in my cramped apartment, knees pressed to my chest as I cried over unpaid bills, wondering if Clara had been right all along. Maybe this wasn't a real career. Maybe I was just fooling myself. But then I'd hear my father's voice in my head. "Things break, Bella. You fix them." And I'd get back up. Still, life didn't make it easy. There were weeks when the electricity was cut off, when I ate instant noodles for dinner 3 nights in a row. Once I showed up at class after pulling an all-nighter at the diner, only to find out my laptop had crashed and erased an entire project. I nearly quit right then, the weight of exhaustion pressing down on me like an avalanche. And yet, somehow, I kept moving. What made it worse was seeing Clara thrive, or at least pretend to. Social media was her stage, and she played the role of the successful, untouchable girl perfectly. Glamorous selfies at sorority houses, pictures in designer dresses with cocktails in hand, and the captions always dripping with the same arrogance she had shown me that night. Some of us were made for success, others, not so much. She never tagged me, never mentioned me, but I could feel her shadow every time I scrolled. The worst moment came during a holiday visit back home. I bumped into Clara at the town's only coffee shop. I was wearing a worn-out hoodie, my hair pulled back in a messy bun, clutching my secondhand laptop like it was a lifeline. She was draped in a designer coat, makeup flawless, nails manicured to perfection. "Well, if it isn't Bella the artist," she said, her voice sugary sweet but her eyes sharp. "Still drawing cartoons for pennies? Or have you finally realized real jobs pay better?" I wanted to scream at her, to tell her about the hours I worked, the nights I sacrificed, the tiny victories I held on to like lifeboats. But instead I just smiled weakly and said, "I'm getting there." Her laugh followed me out the door, that same cruel laugh from the party years ago. That day nearly broke me. I went home and sat at my desk, staring at blank pages, hands trembling with rage and shame. For hours I couldn't work. All I could see was Clara's smug face, her perfect life, her effortless cruelty. But in that fury, something inside me hardened. I decided I would never let her be right. I poured everything into my work. Nights blurred into mornings. I stopped scrolling social media. I stopped comparing myself to her curated perfection. Instead, I focused on every small step forward. 1 client became 2, 2 became 5. I built a small website. Word spread. Slowly, people started to note it. So me, not Clara, not her glittering world, but me. Still, it wasn't enough. My income barely covered rent. My portfolio was still too small, and in the back of my mind, Clara's laughter echoed like a curse. I didn't know it then, but the storm was gathering. My lowest point was about to collide with the turning point of my life, the moment that would finally shift everything. And when it did, Clara would no longer be laughing. The change didn't happen overnight. Success never does. But one email, one single message in my inbox, became the turning point of my entire life. It was from a small startup in the city. They had stumbled across my portfolio online and wanted me to design a brand identity for their launch. It wasn't much money, but it was the kind of opportunity I'd been praying for. I poured my soul into that project. Every color, every line, every word on their logo carried the weight of my years of struggle. When they launched, the branding caught fire. Investors noticed. Clients noticed. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know who had designed their visuals, and that who was me. One project became 5. 5 became 50. Within a year, I wasn't the broke girl in a diner uniform anymore. I was a rising name in the design world. My work was featured in magazines. I got invited to conferences. Companies that once ignored me were now knocking on my door. And the sweetest irony? My office was just a few blocks from where Clara's so-called dream job collapsed. See, while I had been quietly grinding, Clara's life wasn't as perfect as she made it look online. Her sorority friends, gone after graduation, her glamorous lifestyle, funded by credit cards, and the big job she bragged about, it ended when her company downsized, leaving her scrambling. The first time I heard she was struggling, I didn't believe it. This was Clara, queen of perfection, destroyer of dreams. But small towns have big mouths and word spread quickly. She had debts. She couldn't keep up her lifestyle. Slowly, the sparkle dimmed. Still, I didn't reach out. Not after what she had done. I just kept building. 2 years later, I signed the lease on my own office space. Glass walls, sleek furniture, my company name etched in silver on the door. Walking into that place for the first time, I felt tears sting my eyes. This wasn't just an office. It was proof that every sacrifice, every humiliation, every cruel laugh had been worth it. And then, the plot twist I never could have scripted. My company was expanding and we needed more staff, designers, assistants, even janitorial staff. We posted job listings everywhere. I didn't even glance at most of the applications. But when HR called me into the conference room one morning with a file in hand, my world froze. Her name was printed at the top in bold letters. Clara Hastings. She had applied for a cleaning position. I stared at the paper, my hands trembling. The girl who once mocked me in front of everyone for chasing a fake career was now asking for a job cleaning the office that career had built. It felt surreal, like the universe itself had decided to hand me a piece of poetic justice on a silver platter. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or throw the file across the room. But deep down, one truth settled heavy in my chest. Fate had finally spun the wheel back in my direction. When I approved her application, it wasn't out of kindness. It wasn't out of forgiveness. It was because some lessons in life can't be spoken. They have to be lived. And Clara was about to live hers. The first morning, Clara walked into my office as an employee. I almost didn't recognize her. Her hair, once glossy and styled to perfection, was tied back in a plain knot. The expensive designer coats she used to flaunt were gone, replaced by a faded uniform and worn-out sneakers. Her eyes darted nervously around the lobby, wide and uncertain, as if she knew the weight of where Shada as he was stepping. And then her gaze landed on me. I was standing near the glass wall of my office, arms folded, wearing a tailored blazer and heels that clicked with authority. For a moment, time froze. I saw her pupils widen, her lips part in disbelief. "Bella?" she whispered, barely audible. I tilted my head, a faint smile tugging at my lips. "Welcome to the company, Clara." Her face flushed crimson, and she quickly looked away, clutching the mop in her hand as though it could shield her from the humiliation dripping in the air. The same girl who once laughed at my dream now stood in my office, not as an equal, not even close, but as the help. Watching her scrub the marble floors while my team brainstormed creative campaigns in the conference room was the sweetest kind of revenge. Every swipe of her mop against the tiles felt like an echo of her words from that night. That's not a real career. But the real climax came one Friday afternoon. We had a client meeting, a huge deal that could expand our business internationally. My team was buzzing, clients were arriving, and the air was thick with excitement. Clara was tasked with tidying up the conference room beforehand. When I walked in with the clients, she was still there, crouched on the floor, wiping the edge of the glass table. She froze when she saw me. For a split second, our eyes locked. The once glamorous Clara on her knees, and me, the girl she mocked, leading a multi-million-dollar presentation. One of the clients glanced at her curiously. "Is she?" "Yes," I said smoothly, without missing a beat. "That's our cleaning staff. She keeps this place spotless so we can focus on success." Clara's face crumpled, and she quickly lowered her head, cheeks burning with shame. She finished her task in silence and slipped out of the room, but the damage was done. The humiliation was complete, witnessed not just by me, but by others. And for the first time, I felt truly free from her shadow. That night, when the office was quiet, I stayed late, walking the empty halls. I found Clara alone in the corner, wringing out her cleaning cloth. She looked up, her eyes tired, her pride completely stripped away. "I never thought," she began, her voice breaking. "I never thought it would come to this." I studied her, the girl who once made me cry myself to sleep. Part of me wanted to spit her words back at her, to mock her the way she mocked me. But I didn't. I didn't need to. Instead, I leaned closer, my voice low but steady. "You told me I'd never make it. You laughed at me when I dreamed. But look at me now, Clara. And look at you." Her eyes welled with tears, and for once she had no clever comeback, no cruel smirk. Only silence. I turned and walked away, heels echoing against the floor she had just cleaned. The revenge was complete, not because I destroyed her, but because she destroyed herself. And I had risen above it all. The weeks that followed felt strangely quiet, even though my office buzzed with success. Clients poured in, projects multiplied, and my team celebrated milestone after milestone. Yet every time I passed Clara in the hall, a part of me was pulled back to that night. The party, the laughter, the sting of betrayal. It was surreal watching her mop floors while I signed contracts. It wasn't just about money or power. It was about the irony, the reversal of roles. Once she towered above me, feeding her ego with my humiliation. Now, life had flipped the script in ways neither of us could have imagined. But here's the truth I didn't expect. Revenge didn't feel exactly the way I thought it would. Yes, there was satisfaction. Seeing Clara humbled, stripped of her arrogance, was undeniably sweet. But alongside it was something else. Something heavier. Pity. Sometimes I'd catch her sitting in the supply closet, head in her hands, looking more lost than cruel. She wasn't the untouchable queen anymore. She was just human. Flawed, broken, and paying for mistakes she probably thought she'd never face consequences for. It made me wonder, had her cruelty come from fear all along? Fear that I might succeed where she wouldn't? Fear that my dream, the one she mocked, would shine brighter than hers? Still, I never let those questions soften me too much. Forgiveness is noble, yes, but forgetting? Impossible. The scars of her betrayal ran too deep. One evening, after the office had emptied, I stood by the tall glass windows overlooking the city. The skyline shimmered in lights, a living reminder of how far I'd come. My reflection stared back at me, stronger, sharper, braver than the girl Clara once tried to destroy. And then behind me, I heard the faint squeak of the cleaning cart. Clara pushed it slowly, her shoulders hunched, eyes downcast. Our eyes met in the glass. For a moment, it felt like time bent again. Two girls from a small town, forever bound by one cruel moment that had shaped us both. I turned, walked toward her, and stopped just inches away. "Clara," I said softly. She froze, waiting for whatever I would say next. Maybe she thought I'd fire her. Maybe she thought I'd offer forgiveness. Instead, I simply said, "Thank you." Her brows furrowed. "For what?" "For giving me the fire I needed," I replied. "If you hadn't laughed at me that night, I might never have fought so hard to prove myself. I might not be standing here now." Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. She just lowered her eyes and pushed the card away. And in that moment, I felt lighter. Not because I forgave her, but because I no longer needed her validation or her apology. I had already won. When people ask me today how I built my company, how I survived the setbacks and silenced the doubt, I smile and give them the professional answers. Hard work, persistence, passion, but deep down, I know the truth. The truth is that sometimes the people who try to break you are the very ones who give you the strength to rise. Clara thought she was mocking me. What she really did was hand me the weapon I needed to fight. And that's why every time I walk into my office, I don't just see polished marble floors. I see victory. I see proof that betrayal can be turned into power. And most of all, I see the reminder that no dream is too small, no voice too quiet, and no insult too sharp to keep you from building the life you deserve. So if you've ever been mocked, doubted, or torn down, remember my story. Don't let their laughter kill your dream. Let it light your fire. Because one day, you might be the one walking across the marble floors, while they're the ones left cleaning them.